They took a president. They took the oil, but they could not take the money. Venezuela sits on oceans of crude, enough to power nations, enough to reshape markets, and yet, in a White House room, something extraordinary happens. The President of the United States asks for $100 billion from the biggest oil companies on earth. Silence, no checks, no commitments, no applause. Then a single word lands like a hammer: uninvestable. Not poor, not small, not temporary, uninvestable. This is where politics collides with reality, where power meets its limit, where headlines promise miracles, but capital quietly walks away. If you want to understand why oil prices don't move on speeches, why markets ignore strongmen, and why control is not the same as confidence, you're in the right place. Because before we talk about money, we must first understand the problem everyone is pretending not to see. And that is where this story truly begins. Here is the problem, stripped of illusion. Venezuela has oil, a lot of it, some of the largest reserves on the planet. So why isn't money rushing in? Because oil alone is not the business. Investment is not about geology. It is about rules, contracts, security, and memory. The executives in that room know Venezuela's past. Assets seized, twice, rules rewritten, promises broken. Capital does not forget. It remembers quietly, and it punishes patiently. Trump speaks the language of power. Seizures, control, orders, permission, but markets speak a different language. Stability, law, predictability, that is the collision you are watching. A government saying, we decide. And companies replying without saying it aloud, we don't believe you. This is not defiance. It is math. And once you understand that, you are ready to look backward, to see how Venezuela became this kind of place in the first place. To understand this moment, you have to rewind not years, decades. Oil was discovered in Venezuela more than a century ago. From the beginning, it shaped everything. The economy, the state, the politics. For a long time, foreign companies came, they drilled, they built, they paid. Then the rules began to change. Control replaced cooperation. The state took a larger role, then a dominant one. Over time, investment slowed. Maintenance slipped. Technology aged. Production did not collapse overnight. It eroded layer by layer, decision by decision. Sanctions later tightened the vice. Capital retreated further. Expertise followed. By the time we reach today, Venezuela produces about 1 million barrels a day, less than 1% of global supply. A country rich in oil, but poor in confidence. That history is not background noise. It is the mechanism, and it explains why, when a new promise is made, the room does not move. Because the past is not past. And in the next moment, that history collides with a very modern shock. Then comes the shock. January 3rd, a raid, the seizure of a leader. Power changes hands, and suddenly the message shifts. Sanctions will be rolled back. Oil will flow again. Deals will be approved selectively. The United States seizes oil tankers, controls sales, holds revenues in treasury accounts. Money will move, but not freely. This is presented as stability, as order, as leverage. Trump tells executives, you deal with us, not Venezuela. For politics, this is decisive. For markets, it is alarming because investors hear something else. They hear control without clarity, authority without permanence. Still, some lean forward. Chevron plans to expand. Exxon sends a technical team. Repsol sees a path under the right conditions. Hope flickers, but it does not ignite. If you want to understand why optimism stops here, pay attention, because the real story is not what is announced. It is what remains unsaid. And that takes us inside the system itself. Here is what sits beneath the headlines. Oil investment is slow, heavy, unforgiving. It demands three things: physical security, legal certainty, a competitive fiscal framework. Remove one, and capital hesitates. Remove all three, and it leaves Venezuela today fails all three tests. Executives are not being dramatic. They are being precise. Exxon remembers its assets seized. Twice, history matters more than promises. Shell and Exxon are not thinking in millions. They think in decades, in tens of billions, and no executive commits that kind of money when rules can change overnight and courts may not protect them. This is why the responses sound polite, supportive, encouraging, but the dollars do not follow. Power can open doors. It cannot force confidence. That is the hidden mechanism at work. The one speeches cannot override, and once you see it, you can feel the tension building because the system is now under strain. And that strain produces another crisis. Then reality pushes back. Analysts run the numbers. Slowly, carefully, to triple production, Venezuela needs $8 to $9 billion every year. For decades, not slogans, not meetings, money. Smaller companies may step in. They are eager, they are faster, but their checks are measured in tens of millions, not billions. Trump speaks of $100 billion. Analysts call it fantastical because even if the oil is there, even if the doors open, even if sanctions ease, the system still isn't ready. Infrastructure is degraded, fields are aging, human capital has thinned. This is the second crisis, quieter than a raid, more dangerous, a gap between political ambition and industrial reality. And that gap does not close with time. It widens, which brings us to the people who feel this failure most directly, not presidents, not executives, but you. If you live there, this is not theory. This is daily life. Oil should mean stability, jobs, services, a future. Instead, production stagnates. Revenue freezes, promises repeat. You hear announcements, you hear optimism, you wait, and nothing moves. When investment stalls, so does everything else. Pipelines stay broken, facilities age, opportunities disappear. You are told help is coming. That change is underway. That patience is required, but patience does not pay bills. It does not rebuild systems. It does not restore trust. This is the human cost of uncertainty. And if this story matters to you, if you want to understand how power decisions ripple into ordinary lives, share it. Stay with it. Because awareness is not passive. What happens in Venezuela does not stay there. And that brings us outward, beyond borders, into the global system. What happens in Venezuela sends signals far beyond Caracas. Oil markets are global. They move on expectations, on credibility, on trust. Venezuela produces about 1% of global supply, too small to shock prices, too unstable to calm them. That is why Trump's promise of cheaper energy falls flat. Markets do not price speeches. They price delivery. When tankers are seized, when sales are controlled, when revenues sit in foreign accounts, traders see friction. And friction means risk. For other countries watching, the message is mixed. Opportunity exists, but so does intervention. Politics may open access, but it may also close it again. This uncertainty ripples outward. Companies hesitate elsewhere. Governments calculate carefully. Venezuela becomes a case study, not of abundance, but of constraint. And once a country earns that reputation, it is hard to reverse, which leaves us facing the question that matters most. What happens next? There are three paths forward. None of them are simple. The first is stability, Political calm holds. Rules stop shifting. Investment arrives slowly, cautiously. Over years, production rise, not dramatically, but enough to matter. This is the best outcome, and it requires discipline. The second path is stagnation, partial reform, partial control, promises without permanence. Some money enters, most stays away, production inches up, then stalls. This is the most likely future because it requires the least change. The third path is collapse. Power hardens, control tightens, confidence evaporates, capital leaves completely, infrastructure decays further, oil stays underground, useless. These are not predictions. They are system outcomes. Markets do not care who governs. They care how long rules survive. And the future of Venezuela's oil will be decided not by declarations, but by consistency. Which brings us to the final truth of this story. This story ends where it began, with a number, $100 billion, not because it will arrive, but because it reveals something deeper. Power can seize leaders. It can seize ships. It can even seize oil. But it cannot seize belief. Capital moves only when trust is real, when rules endure. When memory fades, Venezuela's oil is not trapped underground. It is trapped in uncertainty. Until that changes, no executive order will be enough. No meeting will be decisive. No promise will lower prices. If you want to understand the modern world, remember this lesson. Politics creates moments. Markets judge systems, and systems, once broken, are rebuilt slowly or not at all. If this analysis helped you see power differently, share it, question the headlines, and join me in the next conversation. Because the most important stories are never just about oil.